from the east. He sees Tiger tanks, 2 of them, Panzer tanks, 2 of them, infantry, 50 plus change.
The German government just recently announced that it will be giving 50 Cheetah tanks or Gepard tanks to the Ukrainians to help them fight against the Russians. And the Chancellor of Germany, interestingly enough, stated that any Eastern European country that gives arms to Ukraine in the war effort will be compensated by Germany with Western kit from its own stock, according to the Financial Times. And it's very interesting that Poland, to America's surprise, announced that it is willing to give its MiGs to Ukraine. And Poland stated that it will be willing to give its MiGs to Ukraine as long as America gives some F-16s to the Polish Air Force. And Poland stated that it will be willing to purchase those F-16s in exchange of giving MiGs to Ukraine. America has shown every sign that it is not willing to fulfill this plan. The Pentagon has stated that there are logistical problems with this. How are we going to get those MiGs into Ukrainian hands and all that stuff? And I think really what this is America not wanting to give fighter jets to Ukraine through Poland, because America does not want to give the impression that it is directly involved in this war against the Russians. So it's possible that in the future Germany will say something like, hey, we were willing to compensate Eastern European countries if they gave arms to Ukraine for the war effort. But look, America was kind of hesitant. And Germany could soften up its language and say something like, we are willing to continue to work with NATO. Of course, we do not want to end our relation with America. We don't want to end our relation with NATO and Europe's defense and protection. But the war with Russia in defense of Ukraine has shown Germany more than capable of being a defender of Europe. And so Germany would like to pursue its plan for more and more military autonomy, or more and more autonomy in the realm of defending Europe. And that could be something said in the future. Well, something like rhetoric like this has been being said for years, but Germany could amplify this rhetoric in light of this war between Russia and Ukraine. And Germany could say something like, well, America was hesitant to make this trade-off with Poland, but we are not hesitant to compensate other countries if they give arms to Ukraine. And this sort of thing could be used as a way to widen the gap between the EU and the United States. I think it's quite obvious what Germany is doing. Germany wants to demonstrate itself as the defender of Europe. And there has been much talk in Europe about Germany pursuing this idea of being a defender of other European countries. Just recently, a Ukrainian lawyer and eco-activist, I like to say eco-fascist, Konstantin Kretinsky, stated that, quote, Germany is politically the most powerful and economically the strongest country in Europe. From a Ukrainian point of view, Germany needs to take a leadership role instead of just following and reacting to what other countries are doing. In other words, Germany needs to become more militarily independent. It needs to become more independent as far as Europe's protection goes. And there was an article that came out on CBS recently, and it states, Germany's decision marked the end of a cross-party commitment not to supply weapons to active conflict zones that had held in Berlin since the end of World War II. In addition to pressure from the U.S., Scholz's coalition government was convinced to abandon that policy by Ukraine's ambassador in Berlin and by the fact that several smaller European nations have been sending heavy weapons to Ukraine for weeks. So America has been pressuring Germany to provide arms to the Ukrainians. And I think that this is reflected in what Eldridge A. Colby stated when the war between Russia and Ukraine first erupted back in February. Elbridge A. Colby served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy and Force Development under the Trump administration. And he stated in an interview with T-Online, which is Germany's biggest news portal, quote, "Realistically, Europe needs more military strength of its own. The USA must prioritize the Asian region. We will no longer be able to play the role of a dominant military power in NATO, as we have in the past. That is why there must be a much greater effort on the part of Europe, and especially Germany." So the Ukrainians and the Americans have been pressuring Germany to get involved in the defense of Ukraine. And the Germans have been complying. And I think the Germans want to comply. The Germans are acting hesitant. They're saying, well, we did give help to the Ukrainians, but supposedly Olaf Scholz was holding back on this. But now the Germans have announced that they will be giving 50 of these tanks to the Ukrainians. But I think that the Germans ultimately want to do this because the Germans have been talking for years about becoming more independent as far as Europe's defense goes, independent from America's security umbrella. And I think that this decision obviously goes along with this greater plan. And I think this is the bigger picture. This is the bigger picture, everybody. The smaller picture is, well, there's this war between Russia and Ukraine, and Germany was hesitant to give arms, but now it's doing it. Look, Germany is changing a little bit. But I think that this is part of a wider plan. Germany for years has been looking for opportunities to break away from its dependence on American security. And we saw this going all the way back to 2016 with the phenomena of Trump saying to the Germans that you need to pay your own fair share. You need to pay for your own defense. And we also saw this with the phenomena of Brexit, in which Britain voted to leave the EU and thus voted to leave its position as Europe's number one financer for Europe's security. And so because the British left, they left that position of being the biggest contributor to Europe's defense budget. And so that position is now being taken by the Germans. And I remember back in 2017 and in 2018, Angela Merkel saying things like, the days of us trusting in our allies, America and the UK, are to a great extent over. So what we're seeing with Germany right now is a manifestation, or really the materialization of this sentiment. Germany is rising, and it is ascending itself as the defender of Europe. We are entering a new world in which old powers are reviving. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.